Hello, this is Tom Falwell. This is Essentia Live. We are doing issue number 6 today, and our guest is Michael Deller, author of Hedge King in Winter, among other tales that he's going to be telling us about. And I want everyone to just welcome him, and we will be talking with him today, and we'll show you links to his books and everything at the end of the interview. So welcome, Michael. Glad to have you aboard. Kind of tell us a little about yourself and tell us a little bit about your books.
Thanks, Tom. Nice to be here. Me, let's see. What do you want to know about me? Raised in New Jersey, currently living back in that New York City area. Although currently at the moment I'm actually in Savannah, beautiful, lovely southeast coastern Savannah. And I've been writing for, since I was a kid. About 14, 15 years old, I started picking up the pen and trying to figure out how to make a story work. And there have been some knocks in between over the last 30 years, but finally got a couple books out, and really happy about it. I'm glad to be able to finally start bringing some stories out to the public.
Yeah. I've looked at your book. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but it is on. I think I actually already have a copy. I just got it on my TBR list there, and it's pretty long. So, but one question I have, and I've heard of a hedge knight, which is a knight who doesn't really serve a specific king, but I've never heard of a hedge king. What is a hedge king?
Oh, I think that I know George Martin does the hedge knight stories in Westeros. I think he and I probably found the term from a similar source somewhere. But the idea of the hedge knight or hedge king is basically a very small kingdom, or a very knight, like you say, who's wandering the roads between the hedges. So hedges were used to block off territories. And so, when you're thinking about something, territory that small, the only thing that serves as a boundary are the hedges that the locals set up.
And your first one is the Hedge King in Winter, and I think the synopsis said something about the king is crippled and his brother's got to help him fend off some people that want to kind of take over. Can you tell us a little about that?
It's the story about sort of family rivalries. The king is crippled, and in the world of the story, being crippled automatically disqualifies the sitting king for staying in his seat. So he has to find a successor. And in the world of the story, again, the kingdom, the small kingdoms, are not, they don't have what's called primogeniture succession. The firstborn, the son, doesn't always inherit. So in this case, the tribe has a right to elect their new king, but the sitting king and some of his supporters don't really want the other rival cousins in the family to take over the kingship. They would rather keep it sort of in the nuclear family. So they look to the king's brother, who's just a few years younger than he is, but still in his early 20s. And the story then revolves around the power struggles between the cousins and the brothers trying to keep the throne.
So is this something you like to write about, political struggles in a medieval setting? Or?
I liked the ideas that, I learned about some of these rules of kingship as I was studying Irish history and setting up the background for the world that I set the stories in. And I liked the idea of what would happen if a king became crippled and you had this extended family, all of which is eligible to become the new king. What would happen if the king was put in a position, or that one of the candidates was put in a position of being supported by many of the power players, but not necessarily by the electorate? And what would happen if he just took the throne rather than allowing himself to be elected, or trying to be elected and maybe failing? I think it lends itself to some interesting comparisons with some of our current political dynamics these days.
Yeah, we got quite a show going on right now. is there a particular reason that you're writing in this particular genre in fantasy, or is there something about that you like, or?
Fantasy is something I've always really enjoyed ever since I was really young. Some of the first stories that I ever learned how to read were Greek myths and Roman myths. And as I grew older, I got into, as a sort of a middle schooler, I got into the Dungeons and Dragons role-playing games, which introduced me to even more mythologies and monsters and all of that stuff. And I've always enjoyed the genre, and then I read some really great work in the genre just as I was starting to think that I might want to become a writer myself. One of the influences I always point to is C.J. Cherryh. I read her Gate of Ivral book when I was about 10 or 11 years old, and I absolutely loved it. She sucked me into that world faster than I could say no. And I've never been able to get away from her writing. I've loved everything she's done. So.
I think I told you I actually met her once at a convention, comic book convention. It was really interesting because she wasn't a big writer back then, so it's really interesting to see that she came so far.
Yeah, 60 books to her name. I should hope to get so far myself.
You mentioned Dungeons and Dragons. Were you a dungeon master, a DM?
I was both a dungeon master and a player as a kid, and then sort of fell out of the game for a few years through high school because it just wasn't cool enough. But then I found some really great friends in college who were players, and I set up a campaign of my own and played them through it for 2 years. And that was one of the best experiences I've had with the D&D game.
For myself, that's kind of where I got my world building techniques.
Yeah.
Influence that for you as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Matter of fact, I have a collection of the old rule books that I look back to whenever I come up with a particularly difficult research question, because if I can't find it in the rule book itself, there's always a bibliography in the back that shows me a primary source I can go to get more information. So yeah, it's been, Dungeons and Dragons and other kinds of role-playing games have played a big influence in the world building.
And you're talking about G.R. Martin. And he the Game of Thrones writer? Or is it?
I actually, sorry.
Or I guess what I'm trying to ask is, did Game of Thrones influence the way that, because you're doing something political? I mean, I know that's all about the politics more than anything else, so I haven't really watched the show that much myself.
I've enjoyed watching the show, but by the time the show came along and by the time I started reading the books, I had actually been about 10 or 15 years into building the world.
Yeah.
So one of the things that struck me about his world is that he seemed to be drawing on some of the same historical resources. Like I see Britain and the Heptarchy in Westeros. So the 7 kingdoms of Mercia and Wessex and Sussex and all of that. I see that in his Westeros project, and that's something I've studied in the process of building my world.
Okay.
So I think we were working parallel without knowing it. And I hope
that happens. I've had people, say to me that my book sounds like I'm almost copying Tolkien. And I'm not really copying him. It's just that he influenced me so heavily that I think that way. So I noticed, too, that your books are not real long. I think you call them novellas. I think the first one's 120 pages. And then you have A Merchant's Tale, book 2, which is about 102 pages. Is there a reason that you keep them short, or is it just how that's coming about? Because, I mean, sometimes the story decides how long it's going to be itself.
Right. These 2 stories came out of a bigger novel project that I did about 1.5 years ago. That novel project clocked in at about 122,000 words, so epic-sized piece. And in the writing of it, I felt I needed to go back into the stories behind those characters in that novel and write their stories. And that's where these novellas came from. And as I was sort of putting together my publishing plan for for that big novel, I said, well, maybe a couple of these shorter introductory novellas would be a nice way of introducing myself to the fantasy genre audience and getting readers interested in my work and seeing what they think of it and helping me to then go back and rewrite that epic monster that I have to write later. So this is sort of a feedback mechanism that I'm trying to gauge the audience.
Okay, so eventually you're planning to write something big in this same world that you've created then.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, matter of fact, the very next book I have coming out in July is going to be a full-length novel. It's clocking in at 65,000 words. So not quite epic length, still in heroic fantasy sort of genre, but with a more romance element. I'm going to step back away from the military and political a little bit and bring a little bit more romance.
Okay, so that's the romancing of Eowyn?
Eowyn, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. It sounds, all of it sounds interesting. I can't wait to start reading it, actually.
Okay.
Have you thought of writing in any other genre, or is fantasy just pretty much where you feel you're going to be set? I
have tried my hand at a number of other genres. I did poetry for a long time when I was an undergrad, really bad undergraduate poetry. And then I've done some sort of contemporary, non-fantasy pieces that I've enjoyed. I've got some short stories in a more contemporary style. I think at some point in my life, I'd probably like to go back to some of these other things that I've tried my hand at. But this story, for some reason, it's been tugging at me for 20 years as I've been building the world. I don't know what it is.
I know that feeling. So you've been writing for quite a while, though. What else have you been writing? I mean, do you write articles for magazines, or what else have you been doing?
For a living, what I was doing for a long time was I worked in publishing on the back end, on the business side of things, doing digital publishing, production design, and things like that. So I wasn't publishing my work for a very long time. I was more focused on the craft, and to be quite honest, coming home from work too exhausted to do much writing for many days. So the coming back in, I was doing a lot of writing as a young man and into college, and then I got into the working world and found myself struggling to balance work and career and family and wanting to be writing and not having the time or the energy to do it. And I would end up, getting down into my man cave in the basement in the evenings, so exhausted about that I didn't want to write so much as I wanted to do the world building. World building seemed to be sort of an easy sort of thing to do, sort of putting timelines together and figuring out who's related to whom and what the politics look like and doing research. And out of that, these stories started to emerge, and I would practice with them, and I would send them to my friends, and they'd say, "Oh, there are too many names. You've got like 50 names in the first 3 pages. I can't figure out who's who." And so I kept working at trying to pare down my style and refine the style so that it was more, so my readers were enjoying it more and were able to get through the first 50 pages. So up until recently, I wasn't publishing anything. And then I started publishing a blog about 2.5 years ago. And that was when I started saying, okay, now is the time I think I want to start publishing my stories. And I had all of this, like, almost 20 years of publishing experience behind me. So the idea of sending out manuscripts to literary magazines and small press publishers seemed like a lot of work for very little reward, where I could just send stuff straight out to the readers and start seeing what they thought, which I think is working pretty well. I'm getting pretty good reviews on the work I've done so far and a lot of really good feedback that's really helping me to even further refine my writing style. So I'm really enjoying this adventure in indie publishing.
Yeah, I saw some of the reviews for Hedge King and Winter. They look really good, and I can't wait to read it.
Thanks.
So that answered the question about what made you go into indie publishing. So you've done answered that one.
Oh, good. 2 for 1.
two for one. The Hedge King and Winter. Mm-hmm. Is there something that made you choose the setting that you have in building your world? How did you start? Did you already have it all in mind, or?
I didn't have it in mind at first. At the time when I first started developing it, I was very interested in my Irish heritage. I'm about three-quarters Irish on my mother's side and a little bit on my father's side. I also have some Italian and some German, but for some reason the Irish spoke to me a little bit. At the time I was looking to learn more about my Irish heritage. And as I was learning more and more about it and getting deeper and deeper into it, I was following this line of my mother's mother's maiden name is Donnelly. So I was following her family line back through history as far as I could get the genealogies to go. And then I started looking into what that family name meant in history. And I discovered it actually has a history going back all the way to Neil of the Nine Hostages, who was one of the first historically known high kings of Ireland. So it's the land of Ireland where every man's a king.
That's pretty cool, really. So
Yeah.
are you pretty heavy into history altogether, or?
Yeah, especially from I've done a lot of study of the ancient world, the Roman period, and medieval Western Europe. And so my studies took me to this period where in 1167 to 72, the English first came to Ireland to conquer it under Henry II. And so I said, what would have happened to the Irish if they had been able to resist the English? And that was what got me started on that particular time period, which is the analog for where the stories take place.
Interesting, very interesting. Well, I guess that's about. Or do you have any promotions coming up? Anything you want to let everybody know about?
I do. Well, I think this interview will be appearing on your Essentia Live, which is awesome. And that's coming.
It'll be on my YouTube channel too. So.
Oh, that's great. During the Essentia Live event, I'll actually be doing a few giveaways. I've got 3 other fantasy, paranormal, science fiction authors lined up who are going to be donating some of their work as giveaways during my event, during the Essentia event. And then on top of that, I'm doing a Gleam giveaway, which will involve people doing scavenger hunts and posting things online and to get entries. And the person with the most number of entries will get a free signed copy of The Romance of Eowyn, which is the new book coming out in July. And they'll be able to get that in the next couple of weeks.
Well, before you take off, after we get done here, talk to me. I'll donate something for that little thing too there. So,
that sounds great. I'd love to have you.
glad to help out. And I guess we're going to run out of time, and before they decide to cut us off like they do on TV, when the time's up, they just whack them off.
They play the music out.
Yeah. So I just want to thank you for coming. I'm just really pleased to have you with us today, and thank you for doing the interview, and thank you for appearing on Essentia Live and helping me to make that a magazine something that authors can look forward to help get people aware of indie books. And
Thanks so much for having me.
Are going a long way in making people aware that there are good authors out there that don't work for the big publishing companies.
That's right. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a great opportunity. I really enjoy the opportunity to get out and share my work and the work of other indie authors, because you're right, there's so much out there that's being overlooked that people just can't find. So if we can raise people's awareness, I think we'll start making some headway.
Yep, I think so. And I might want to have some talk with you about world building one of these days.
I look forward to it.
We'll keep in touch. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Tom.